Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Witt. I'm an anchor with MSNBC. I host Weekends with Alex Witt. I'm also an NBC News correspondent, and I'm so delighted to be here. And I take it all of you are too, because we have an outstanding panel. I'm just going to tell you that we did a conference call to sort of get to know each other about a week and a half ago. It was supposed to go for 45 minutes. It went like an hour. And I said, oh boy, we're going to have to zip through all of this because we have so much terrific information and 5 fabulously enthusiastic people that want to share it all with you. The title of this panel, Living Healthy, Education, Access, and Activity. And I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves. Gives you about a 1-minute synopsis of what they do and what their focus is. So Robert Eggers, you first.
My name is Robert Egger. I am the founder and president of the LA Kitchen, which is about to open. I came after almost 40 years in Washington, D.C., 25 leading the D.C. Central Kitchen, pioneering efforts to use food that used to be thrown away, people our society undervalued, kitchens that were underutilized, volunteers that wanted to be part of something important, chefs who had food but also had jobs and would help teach, and more importantly, men and women who were homeless, coming out of addiction recovery programs, or coming home from prison that wanted a role in our society. And I made that rock, and I'm here to do the same thing in LA. Thank you very much.
Pretty extraordinary.
He did make that rock, by the way. DC Central Kitchen is an amazing place.
Sam Cass.
My name's Sam Cass. I'm the executive director of Let's Move and senior policy advisor for nutrition at the White House. I've been leading and working with the First Lady on Let's Move and her efforts to ensure that all families have the chance to raise their kids in a healthy way and make sure that the youngest generation reaches adulthood and ready for the world and in good health. It's been an amazing effort that's bringing together the business sector, schools, nonprofits, leadership from all corners of our country to really forge a healthier future. I'm also a chef, so on the side I cook dinner for the President and First Lady, but most of what we do is the nutrition work.
Yeah, he had to hightail it out of the conference call that we did. It's like, I gotta go, I gotta make dinner for the first family. Go.
I literally sprinted.
He was running through the halls of the White House. All right, Michelle Nishan.
My name is Michelle Nishan. I'm a chef as well, but also CEO of an organization called Wholesome Wave. And our theory of change is based on huge pots of money that are available through federal policy, tax dollars that are being spent that if they were repurposed could have a better outcome. So we create private sector pilots with private funding to create demonstration pilots of what would happen if that money was spent differently. Our marquee program, our Double Up program, where we double the value of food stamps at farmers markets, has been memorialized now in the Farm Bill with $100 million of federal funding to provide nutrition incentives at farmers markets for locally grown fruits and vegetables. So we get that policy change and keep looking for other things to solve.
Okay. Rachel Poplack.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Poplack. I'm Director of Strategy at the Health Trust. I'm not a chef, but wish I was a chef. I am a former director of our Healthy Eating Initiative, and within that initiative, we are focused on shifting the dynamic around healthy food access in Silicon Valley within our low-income communities. We focus on using urban ag, community and school gardens, mobile produce vending, shifting the availability of healthy foods within corner stores, as well as education around shifting consumption behaviors around fresh fruits and vegetables.
Okay, great. Larry Solar?
I'm Larry Solar. I'm CEO of the Partnership for Healthier America, which is a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. that was formed about 4 years ago when the First Lady announced the Let's Move initiative. And our role is really to work on childhood obesity, broader health and wellness issues by working with the private sector. And our process involves helping private sector partners make changes to their goods and services to provide healthier options for American families. We have about 70 agreements thus far. They range from food to physical activity, early childhood education, and so on. So excited to be here.
Okay. I'd like to put up a slide, first of all, because let's face it, we all are here and most of us have a foot in the financial industry. So let's talk about the money and the cost of being unhealthy, of being obese. I think it's slide number 2. I'd like to have thrown up here, and you'll see it talks about obesity creating a significant economic burden here. You know, I'll read it. If the country could reverse the growth rate of obesity and return to 1998 levels in 2023, then this would translate to a reduction in healthcare spending of $60 billion and an increase in productivity of $254 billion. So we have to talk about why aren't more corporations embracing this? And speaking with Larry earlier, I mean, this is what he's getting out there to do, and you've had some challenges. I mean, you have 70 corporations working with you, which is terrific. But one statistic was that 10% of hospitals in this country have amended their dietary plans there to reflect a healthier eating. I was like, 10% of hospitals? Are you kidding me? Why not 100% of hospitals? I mean, it just makes sense. So talk about the challenges in convincing people that these stats are legit.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of challenges, and Fried Chicken Friday at hospitals is really popular, so it takes a while to kind of get over that. But I think if you look back 5 or 10 years ago when we were talking to companies and saying, hey, provide healthier options, how can we work together? They would say, look, we'd love to do that. We want to make money by selling healthier things, but consumers just aren't wanting it. But now what we're seeing is precisely the opposite, which is that consumer demand are driving companies to more and more come see us. And I think that bodes really well for the future. I think we are facing an opportunity that companies are seeing that if they are not ahead of the curve and providing these options for their customers, they're worried that they're going to be behind the curve. And I think one of the really important things for those of you who are in the financial sector is for you to help us make this case to companies. I know it's great when I do a deal with a company, they come back to see me and they say, hey, we just had the best quarter we've had in 2 years, and they tie it to the initiative that we were able to do. So our role is really to try to make this a huge win for companies, make it successful for them. If this can be profitable, it can be sustainable, and that's our approach.
I'm curious, do you, Larry, have a challenge when it comes to different pockets of the country? I mean, are there geographical differences? I mean, here we eat, tofu and almond milk here in California, not necessarily the case in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely on the coast, we've seen an easier time. That's where the trends have happened. And for instance, on the hospital initiative that we have, so we have about 10% of hospitals that are signed up that provide healthy options to their customers, their patients, not requiring anything, just have those options available. But the South has been probably the most difficult place for us to work on. But I think many of our initiatives are national. We're building grocery stores across the country with our partners, and those are going to be, in many cases, in the South and throughout. And so the first step to provide healthier opportunities for families is to give them access.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I think that's, we've made a lot of progress there, but really just scratching the surface.
And we're going to get to that on how, I mean, I'm from MSNBC, all politics is local and you build from there. Same thing here. I mean, you have to feed from your backyard first and grow it that way. With regard to what you guys are doing at the Healthy Trust, or rather the Health Trust, Rachel, you have a foundation. You have 15 different partners, is it, with whom you work, and you're trying to expand that?
Oh, I'd say we have a lot more than 15 partners. We have we partner across
programs. Pardon me, 15 programs.
Programs.
Right?
So we have a diversity of programs across different focus areas. We have a focus on chronic disease prevention and management around healthy food access, as well as healthy aging. As well as healthy eating. And within our healthy eating initiative, we partner across the sectors. So we look at how do we work with our local government, how do we work with our local businesses, how do we work with fellow nonprofits, with schools, to really shift that norm around healthy food access. Larry was talking about the challenges at the national level with the business argument, and we're having the same challenges at the local level. So we work with corner store owners. We know that corner store owners, the number one thing that they get asked to stock is more fresh produce, is fresh food. But you go to corner store owners, 80% of them want to stock it, but they don't know how to source it. They don't have the financial resources for the refrigeration that they need to stock the low-fat milk or to have an apple that's going to last more than 3 days on the shelf. So, we're working at a local level to provide that business technical assistance and to be able to make the business argument that it can be profitable to sell healthy food, and then at the same time to also drive that consumer demand. So everybody knows that they're supposed to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, but the demand is driven in part not just by knowing that you should be eating it, but also that it's a food that they want to eat. So in our community, it's about 35% Latino. If the only vegetable that you're stocking in the shelves is kale, it's not going to be flying off the shelves. So how do we work with the retail environment to make sure that products are culturally relevant, that they're affordable, that they're quality, and that it makes business sense for the retailers that are selling that produce?
Yeah. And Robert and Michelle, I want you guys to speak to that because you guys really are doing things from the ground up. Robert, if you want to go first, you're the local guy here with the LA Kitchen. You have access here, and part of the reason you started this program and left DC was because here we have availability with the produce, access to it, right? I mean, that was something that was, part of your ideology.
Well, I'm very interested in the leadership we have to display here. And the world I came from, kind of the nonprofit anti-hunger world, relies on donated product. Donated product is lost profit. and it's going away. The only long-term sustainable source of food that you can count on, and it's important to realize we throw away 40% of the food we produce every day in America. Half of that's fruits and vegetables. That's why I'm here in Los Angeles. You have an unlimited supply to incredibly healthy food. But going back to the business of this, there's a demographic crossroads up ahead. I'm anticipating 5 and 10 years out when demographics will have a younger generation who's been raised eating differently, much because of the work of Sam in the White House, who will come into their purchasing prime. At the same time, every single morning, 10,000 people wake up 67 in America, and that's going to go on for the next 20 years. And what you're going to see predictably is a significant portion of older men and women who will come to grips with the reality that less meat, more green will help them. Their diet will play a huge role in the medicines they take and the vital lifestyle they're going to want to live. So, the opportunity is coming. I think too many people understandably are trying to do it right now. Demographically, we're just not ready, but it is coming, and smart people are preparing now.
Yeah, and some of the federal programs like the SNAP Food Assistance Program, what's really great about what you're doing, Michelle, is you're trying to double the value of what people will be able to get when they go to the market and use SNAP. They can talk about that. Talk about what you're trying to do to promote that.
It's a restaurateur chef's approach to, if you see something that you really want people to eat, you do a 2-for-1 sale. It's easy to run a special and get somebody interested in a product. And we really wanted to explore. We saw the tension of the $80 billion a year. It's a huge market. $80 billion gets spent on food by 50 million Americans struggling with poverty. That's a huge amount of money. If we could shift that to a healthier food choice, we have a market-based approach through this federal food assistance program. And what we found by introducing the incentives, I think the great news, and this speaks to both what Robert and what Larry were saying, there is a market for it. We're seeing that in underserved communities, and we're in 24 states with this program, that these communities do want to feed their children better food. They do make the healthier food choice. They will experiment with something like kohlrabi or kale if they can afford to take that risk, because it's very seldom that this demographic has an opportunity to really improve the lives of their children. So there's a very important sociology in these communities that a lot of people miss. And that's when you provide this affordability, you can actually shift the way that $80 billion gets spent to a better outcome.
Yeah. There's also, though, the question of educating. Who here is helping to educate the communities on a local level?
Well, what we found, one of the reasons what we do to disperse our products and to distribute them, we partner with over 60 nonprofit partners that work in these communities specifically around some kind of social justice or equity, and often with food. And at the markets that they run, they do cooking classes and they do that outreach. And the more successful ones actually reach into the community and learn who the good cooks in the community are and bring them in and teach them how to do cooking classes. So there's that extra layer of credibility because it's actually somebody from within the community that's doing the teaching. And they'll partner with colleges as well. So almost all of our markets have some kind of an educational component, and it sticks better when people can actually learn what to do with something like kale and then afford to go and make the choice and buy the kale and take it home when the knowledge is fresh.
Yeah, and we just launched, actually, USDA is funding education efforts focused specifically on in California it's called CalFresh, but nationally the SNAP Ed population. So we will be launching over the next 3 years an education effort that specifically uses peer health educators as educators in the community to reach out to the SNAP Ed eligible population, educate them around the food that they can that is healthy to be consuming, where they can access that food. And I would add that the second piece around the education around SNAP Ed is that national efforts like Michelle is leading to double the value of the CalFresh benefits is great. The challenge at the local sometimes is that the markets aren't accepting CalFresh because it's not a mandate that farmers markets associations or farmers markets actually accept the CalFresh benefits. So we were successful in San Jose 2 years ago, actually with the support of some funding from Communities Putting Prevention to Work, which if you were at the session this morning was referenced as money that was allocated towards prevention, in creating a mandate within the city of San Jose that any farmers market that is operated is required to accept CalFresh benefits as well as WIC. And that's a movement that's starting to happen. So I think what you'll see is that there's an effort to match the policies that are happening at the national level with strategies at the local level to support the implementation of those.
Yeah, before we get to things from the White House perspective with Sam, Robert, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm a nutritional futurist, and right now, less than 10% of income-eligible seniors access Meals on Wheels or SNAP. And what's coming predictably, just because workers now in America between 45 and 60, half do not have $10,000 in the bank for retirement. So what you're going to see is a massive uptick in people accessing SNAP and Meals on Wheels, but we still promote what we call the American menu, which is a meat-centric kind of menu plan. So the opportunity to start to mess around with the plate a little bit and experiment with new nutritional guidelines and say, well, you might have a certain amount of protein. That doesn't necessarily have to be a piece of processed meat. It can be a wide variety of things spread out differently. And that's very much the experiment here in LA with the LA Kitchen, is to prepare what I hope will be a very new kind of movement in the way the kind of plant-based meals that we offer our older population. I believe personally that the aging boomers connected with local agriculture will be a revolution, you know, as
No
70
question.
million boomers age out and look to stay vital.
Yeah. So Sam, talk about the White House focus. And when I asked about, you know, who's doing educating, I mean, that's something that you guys do. I mean, you're all about the schools and getting kids at a young level and getting the stuff they should not be eating out of the school systems.
Yeah, I think education obviously takes a lot of different forms and it needs to be and is radically shifting. I mean, it all starts in schools, and so, or really before schools. I think actually early childhood, in fact, prenatal, is showing to be one of the greatest areas of impact that we have. One of the things we've done is started Let's Move Childcare. We have 14,000 childcare centers who are serving water, not sugary drinks, fruits and vegetables for snacks, no fried foods, making sure kids are getting out and running around. And it's part of, along with changes to the WIC and I think increased awareness, where we're starting to see declines or improvements in health outcomes for our lowest or youngest among us. But what we have to do is make sure we get them off to a good start, but then enter into a school system that is serving healthier food and making sure that the vending machines don't have junk food, which is coming into play this fall. So get ready for a bunch of high schoolers complaining about losing their candy bars. But we have to think about education not only just in terms of what they see, and so we've also proposed making sure that there's no junk food marketing in schools, which is vitally important. But also you're learning by what you're eating. I mean, that's an educational experience every single time you eat. And it's shaping preferences and understanding. So making sure that that environment is one that supports kids' health is vital. I think the other side, though, of education is, and this is where we've done a lot of work on, is on the marketing front.
Well, you have Michelle Obama. I mean, wow, what a rock star on this, because she practices what she preaches.
She certainly practices what she preaches, and which is a big, you know, that means a lot. But the nutrition world, you know, we have sort of gone around with our pamphlets and said, eat broccoli, it's got vitamin B in it. Where most other companies are saying, eat or drink this and be happy. And let me tell you how wonderful your life will be in the most sophisticated, brilliant, and incredible way. And we have been losing the battle through marketing. We have to start marketing healthier products with the same sophistication and investment that less healthy products get. And so we've done a lot of work. So we just announced recently, one first step, the First Lady announced with PHA is a partnership with Sesame Street, who's giving all of their characters for free to fruits and vegetables for 2 years, which Sesame Street is like, for younger kids, like, it is just Sesame Street. And so that's a big step to how do we market and make this entertaining, you know, fun. We did a big partnership with PHA and a huge coalition of people in the water world to try to market water as the best and healthiest choice that people can take. And we're making some progress. Larry can maybe talk more about it. But
Drink Up. It's a great program that Larry's doing.
Yeah, so it's called Drink Up, and it's really about trying to encourage people to drink water throughout the day. If you drink water, you drink up. And what was great about it was we had folks who were in the tap industry, tap manufacturing industry, they're in the recyclable bottle industry, they're in the filter industry, they're in the bottled water industry. They all came together with the same common message. And so we've seen now some evidence we'll be publishing soon that has shown that water sales are increasing based on the campaign. And so everyone's excited about that, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Another one that we did recently that showed some really great results was with Bird's Eye Vegetables, where Bird's Eye for the first time marketed vegetables by kids to kids. They used some Nickelodeon iCarly characters and had this great campaign, and they saw their sales for the quarter that followed the campaign substantial increases not only in Birdseye but across the whole category, which was attributed to this campaign. So we know that this sort of marketing is working if we give it a chance. And the last thing I want to say is when Sam and I were at a child care center a few months ago, and we watched these 3-year-old kids at their snack break, and they were such happily eating carrots and cucumbers and hummus and grape tomatoes. And this is the generation of kids that we're raising, and these are going to be the next generations of consumers. So there may be some grousing in some of the high school students, but that's going to end, and we're going to have this whole new group of people who are going to be used to this sort of stuff.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's a real important point in there is that what we're trying to do is sort of create a new norm for what our kids know. And it is just going to become, for the youngest kids now moving into schools, that's just all they're going to know. They're never going to know a vending machine that ever had candy bars in it. And it's not going to seem weird. And the same is being built out throughout our communities. And I think if people and kids have to work really hard to make healthy choice, and all the good things are being undermined by a slew of less healthy products, we're not going to be successful. So I think the strategy is really to weave together, our communities in such a way where people can walk through their day and kids can go through from when they wake up to as they come home and throughout their lives, where it's just that is their norm, and that's the work. And I think it's shifting radically, dramatically. We have a long way to go, but it's even in the last year, the acceleration on this has been pretty tremendous.
Larry, I can understand how when you're pitching Drink Up to water production companies, they're thinking, great, this is terrific for them. What about like the Mars Corporation and people that are doing candy that are in those vending machines that you're trying to get rid of? They're not going to really be welcoming this with open arms.
Well, we're not trying to say don't eat. No one can eat candy bars. I mean, that's not. We're trying to provide healthy options throughout the day. I mean, and we're working with companies wherever they sit. And so Mars is actually one of the companies that's worked with us in the Healthy Weight Commitment Foundation, where they 16 large food distributors have come together to reduce calories by 5 trillion calories that they ended up reducing or so.
6.4.
6.4 trillion calories. Thanks, Sam. Earlier than they beat. So I think
that's by reformulating their products.
By reformulating their products, by changing the sizes, by changing their marketing, all those sorts of things is what's working. So I think there's a way for all these companies to work with us and be part of this. And what we want to do is sit down with them and say, hey, what is it you're doing? What's your future look like? How can we help you make that future successful and also make it healthier?
Yeah.
And Alex, I must jump in because in the school arena is our domain, and food companies for the most part deserve a ton of credit on this, particularly in terms of the vending machines. In fact, Mars in particular, the soda companies, Coke and Pepsi, they have been very supportive and taken major voluntary efforts on their own to remove some of those products from those vending machines. I think they know that they see where the country's moving. They want to be part of the solution. They're figuring out their business models and changes that they have to make. And the last thing anybody wants to be seen is a company that's fighting against the health and well-being of kids and families.
Right.
And that's where we're headed. But so it's not all the time. There's been some unfortunate efforts to classify pizza as a vegetable or make sure that French fries are available 24 hours a day in our schools. So so I don't want to put too rosy a picture on it. There are battles being waged around these issues, but I think by and large it's been with the partnership and collaboration with the private sector that we've been able to accomplish so much, particularly in schools.
Yeah. Let's move. I want to throw up a slide that just talks again from a financial perspective. Let's pull up slide number 3, if you could, please. And look at just the ability to move around, to increase physical activity, and the way that reduces the amount of obesity in this country. I mean, obesity not only being a physical killer to people, it's a financial burden of epic proportions. And I'd like to talk about that. Are any of you dealing with companies in the medical world, companies that are just saying, we are paying so much money and we are losing people, whether it's with your staff, people that work with you, having to pay for all this with health insurance? I mean, what are you hearing on that front?
We're hearing a lot about it. I mean, there's an extraordinary loss of productivity by not only the obesity amongst employees, but the obesity amongst family members, where employees are taking off work or thinking about their family members. And so lots of big companies are doing some interesting things in that space. But one of the things that we've really been trying to do is encourage ways for kids to be physically active throughout the day. And it's really kind of frustrating because we all think about, when we were younger, we were much more physically active, and kids want to be physically active. It's fun to be physically active. It makes you feel good. It's free. I mean, there's so many things about it that that we want to see. But nowadays, when you talk about playing, kids mostly are thinking about video games than they are about running around outside and having fun. So we're working in the community, in the schools, and at home to try to expand the amount of physical activity that kids can have. There's a program called Let's Move Active Schools that we've been working with a number of companies. This is one, Nike's part of it, Reebok is part of it, where we're trying to identify school-based champions who can get their schools into a more active place. And we're seeing a lot of progress and acceleration in that. And so we have some great ambitions there. But physical activity is one that seems to be tough, but it's something that I think is coming together. And but we have some work to do to both change the culture and also the culture of the community to make it more available to people.
Yeah. Talk about your Healthy Corner Store initiative that you have there, and how that works with particularly what Robert and Michelle are doing. I just can say that I can tell you I commute on the train often from Manhattan up to my home in Westchester, and it is incredible the number of gardens I'm seeing in Harlem in places as you're going along the line. I love it, and we've seen such a great percentage of that. And I think a lot of this is thanks to what Michelle and you have done, but like a 17% increase in home gardens.
Yeah, over the last 5 years, we've seen a 17% increase in vegetable gardens in homes, which is now gives us about a third of the country has growing food in their homes, which is pretty extraordinary. And community gardens and school gardens have gone from 1 million to 3 million.
Okay, 300% increase.
Which is
in
pretty.
What, 5 years?
5 years, just as they do this. It worked out perfectly for us because they do this 5-year study. It just happened to capture just before we planted the White House garden to now. So it worked. It worked well. But it's showing just a dramatic shift. And what we see is when you make those connections, and everybody up here is seeing this in different ways. Some simple connections can go a long way, particularly for a young person who now is eating a raw vegetable that they didn't even know what it was, but because they touched it in some way in the process, they feel ownership, and they start embracing a whole new way of eating. And I think once you set that spark, it's sort of no turning back from there.
I think it's important to note too, though, when you look at the personal economy of what happens to especially in communities like the Bronx, where you have an underserved community member feeding 4 children on a $17,000 a year income, that when you're actually paying the price of seed and growing a garden, and then in many of these communities now there are laws that are being passed where people can actually sell the food they're growing in the community garden, that really changes a personal economy. In 1943, Franklin Roosevelt gave a speech when the USDA did an ag consensus, a consumption census in 1942, that demonstrated that 48% of all fresh food consumed in the United States came from privately held victory gardens, not even farmers markets. We're at half the population that we are today. So for anybody who thinks that community gardens and growing your own food is not a scalable thing or could not have an economic impact, in 1942 we were at half the population. So if those same gardens, not even farmers markets, were in production and we were following the same habit, 24% of the fresh food we'd be consuming would be coming from backyards. So that's pretty significant. It's definitely, the fact that gardening is rising, I think has a tremendous potential for changing the personal economy of those families in poverty.
Well, and clearly the Health Trust, believes in that as well. So talk about this Healthy Corner Store initiative.
So we've been doing a lot of work around the Healthy Corner Store initiative as well as on the urban ag. So I'll touch on the urban ag really quick and then talk a little bit about how it's wrapping into our corner store work. Within the urban ag movement, we've been working for the last 6 years or so to really expand community gardens, backyard gardens, front yard gardens, and school gardens. We've had an AmeriCorps grant that has really helped to bring in young people and get them trained as educators and use those gardens as a tool to reduce food insecurity, as well as to change consumption habits. A big challenge around the urban ag movement is the availability of land. Not that the land's not available, but that the land is vacant, and how do community groups gain access to that land. So within San Jose, we've been really working to try and build off of the momentum that's happened nationally through Chicago actually has done a great job around taking vacant land and making it accessible for community groups. The other thing that has happened is that neighborhood agriculture within the city of San Jose has actually become an approved home occupation. So we've created this opportunity now for residents that have their own plots to create this really neighborhood-centric economy around food production and food sales. So residents can now actually grow their own food and sell it to their neighbors to aggregate their food, create neighborhood-based CSAs. So within the Health Trust, we're really focused on what we call neighborhood produce access points. So how do we use farmers markets, urban agriculture as tools, as well as farmers markets, to increase access to produce? Then the other challenge is then how do we connect that to our retailers? So within corner stores, one of the challenges, how do they source local produce? So they might be moving very small quantities of produce. They want produce that's high quality, that's seasonal. So how do we connect these now certified home producers, neighborhood agriculture? How do we look at connecting gleaning? So there's a huge movement around gleaning. We have partners in our region that are pulling thousands of pounds of produce off of trees every year. And how do we connect the urban food waste, the urban food growth movement with the retail environment so that stores are able to stock as well as sell healthy produce? Within corner stores, we know that there's willingness from the store owners. We know that there's demand from the community. It's just a challenge of the corner store owners understanding where to stock the produce and having the resources to be able to market and sell that produce. Within Santa Clara County, there's data that just came out, actually at a statewide level, that looked at the marketing that's happening within retail environments. And if you look at stores, 40% of stores have marketing for sugar-sweetened beverages in their front window, 2% for fresh fruits and vegetables. So part of what we're working to do is not only make that food more available, but then also to launch a marketing and branding effort so that we're able to drive that demand and drive that awareness that there is, in fact, availability of healthy food within these communities.
Robert, can I pick up on something that disturbed me that you said earlier, and that is that 40% waste factor.
Yeah.
How do we bring that number down? Because it's a financial waste, let alone a waste in so many other ways.
Yeah, and it's a hot button issue right now. Significantly, particularly amongst young college-age students, a generation raised doing service, I might add, who are really really roaring towards this food system issue. Which is why 2 or 3 things that were brought up I'd love to riff on for a second. Which is, I think what you're going to see very, very soon is app-driven information. People were basically benign customers, and what you're seeing is a wave of super educated consumers who had the ability to determine which product is good versus what is advertised as good. Another thing, just to riff on for a second, is there's a new movie, Lori David, who was on a previous panel, called Fed Up, that really talks about sugar and the fact that even though exercise is imperative, you almost can't run off the amount of sugar that kids are eating because it's in everything. But back to the food waste, that's, again, I've made my living off what we throw away in America, and it's very much to my interest. And going on schools, I'm mesmerized by school cafeterias as learning centers. We've talked a lot about food, but it's almost as if we're approaching food as gas for the body versus the cafeteria. There's 60,000 school cafeterias in America that are closed all afternoon, all night, all weekend. What an amazing national resource. And you match that with the USDA state extension system. You've got an amazing opportunity here to start to teach, particularly young kids like me and my daughter who aren't analytical learners, book learners. Manipulative learners can go into a cafeteria and learn fractions with measuring cups. You can teach nutrition, science, history. You can do service hours, but you can do intergenerational after school. And as much as I'm frustrated by the amount of food we throw away, I'm more upset by the amount of people we waste.
Well, let's get to that too, because I love what you are doing. I mean, with all the unemployment in this country, you are taking job training programs and you're reaching out to people who might otherwise have a difficult time. You go to people who've been incarcerated, they're coming out, they're going to get jobs. People who've been in foster care may not have had the best educational upbringings or, hopscotched around and their foundations may be a little softer than others. Talk about that and what inspired you to do that, because that's really cool.
Well, I went out and served people out in front of the State Department one night in the rain. I was in a truck, and I saw Charity in America, which is about the redemption of the giver, not the liberation of the receiver. And I just wanted to flip that around because we're a better country. And if it's done well, everybody rises up. So a lot of what I've tried to do, whether it's been corner store conversions or school food, which we did both in DC. We did 40 different corner stores, and we were doing almost 6,000 meals a day, locally sourced, cooked from scratch, challenging these kind of old stereotypes that kids won't eat it. or corner stores don't want it, or it doesn't move. We were able to show those things, and that's a lot of what I like to do is demonstrate that ideas that seem preposterous are actually essential for our country. So in the LA Kitchens model, not only will we train men and women coming up from prison, the goal is for men and women who are 50 years or older.
Yeah.
That's going to be our employment base. The idea of older men and women preparing healthy meals, taking food that would have been thrown away, buying, in effect, saying to farmers, as a charity, I can wait till it's so rotten you give it to me. But how about as a business person, I come out and I'll give you 10 cents on the dollar for it right now. And that's business. And that opens a wide door for us to employ lots of men and women, pay a good wage, and give a profit-sharing hunk of the business to the men and women we employ so they don't become older, poor people themselves. But most importantly, so whether it's students in the job training program, men and women who are now employed, or volunteers, the goal of the kitchens I run, and this happened with the Obamas, when the President of the United States came to the DC Central Kitchen, they stood side by side with men and women in the job training program. That idea of we're shared citizens of the same city. That old concept of I'm going to serve the poor versus let's work together as citizens of Washington or citizens of this country to do what we must do economically as well as socially, which is make our country healthier and more economically powerful through the power of food.
Yeah. Sam, how much do you think the inspiration from the White House is really what's propelling so much of this? I mean, and you can take some credit. It's fine. But think about it.
That's a setup. There's no good answer to that question.
It's going to be all about Sam from here on out. Okay.
Sure there is.
Look, I mean, I should let my friends up here, answer that. No, look, the leadership and the First Lady, her work, her focus, and her creating a space that, when we came into this issue, it was extremely contentious. It's still contentious at the time, but there seemed to be a lot more fighting and yelling than there was progress. And I think one of the biggest roles she's played is to create a space that everybody who was serious, and she was very clear, anybody who's serious about coming up with meaningful, measurable, sustainable solutions to help kids and families has a place at this table. And that, I think, has helped create, not perfectly, but a much more constructive space that people can actually figure out how we move forward. And it's going to take all of us to solve a problem that's this complex, this multifaceted, this deeply ingrained in our culture. Food is who we are. I mean, literally, it's how we understand ourselves. And that's not going to be solved with like just a piece of legislation or a nice marketing campaign. It's going to take so many layers of effort. And I think, so she's helped be a catalyst to a lot of efforts, but it's very important to remember that this work has been happening for decades at every level, from kitchen tables with moms and dads to school teachers to school chefs to local officials and beyond. And I think we've helped empower them, and for people who had been working on it, they felt emboldened. But it's taken everybody, and I think it's going to continue to take this kind of leadership, and it's going to continue to take national leadership as well. So hopefully this is now not only a mainstream issue, which it has become, but becomes more and more political issue. And I think that's the next step that is needed to sort of break through some more of these barriers.
Yeah.
Alex, can I just jump in? Because
Sure.
I think one of the things that's been great about the First Lady has done is that she has helped us show this is an important issue that she can get a lot of attention for, but that it's not a partisan issue. And so, my organization has worked closely with her and with Sam. We also work with Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist and Republicans. And this is really important for us to see that if we want to make progress on this, we need to continue to ensure that this is a bipartisan or nonpartisan issue, providing healthy options for American families and helping reduce healthcare costs and reducing healthcare issues for families is something that all Americans should really be caring
I'll
about.
just say that was a former, because I think that Harry Reid might get a little pissed off if you called him, Senate
Former
Majority
Majority Leader.
Senate Majority Leader. A couple of creative things that that come from these business initiatives, and one I really like from you guys is the mobile produce vending. Talk about that and where that's going.
Yeah, so we are launching a mobile produce vending initiative called Fresh Carts, and it's modeled after New York's Green Cart program. And the idea is that you take residents from the communities that have low food access, high rates of obesity, high rates of poverty. You give them job training, entrepreneurship training, and teach them to be produce vendors. So they essentially are operating push carts in low-income communities that have low access to fresh fruits and vegetables. They're individual business owners, and they're selling fresh fruits and vegetables in those communities that don't have access. What we're excited about the program is that, one, it's a business solution to a community health issue. And I think as we were talking about earlier, that as we continue to sort of struggle with these health issues across our country, we have to look at solutions that make economic sense. So we're looking at launching the first cohort of vendors have finished their training, and they should be literally on the streets in the next couple of weeks. And they'll be partnering with schools, with other nonprofits, with community groups to cross-market where the vendors are going to be. We're, I think, a little bit still challenged in making sure that the vendors can be in those places most accessible to community members, and that's where I think policy work sometimes still at the local level and even at the national level lags behind, somewhat breaking down the barriers to make these new healthy food access points the most convenient. So we're excited. There's been great data that's come out of the success of New York, looking at demonstrating actually change in fruit and vegetable consumption in those boroughs that had the fresh carts, that had the green carts, as compared to those that didn't. And we're hoping to see the same impact in Silicon Valley and in San Jose.
Mm-hmm. So Sam touched on some of the political challenges, but from a business standpoint, Larry, talk about the challenges of convincing different companies that this makes financial sense to re-proportion what they're doing, to refocus and adjust.
Yeah, well, there are, and there are legitimate challenges, and in fact, our process involves some challenges. I think on the positive side, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of companies that are just coming through our doors, which is great, because that means they're coming with an idea or they want to do something, and we're not having just to go and ask. So that shows a lot of progress. I think for about every 10 companies that we see, maybe one makes it through our process, because we wanted to develop a system by which we had real clarity with the companies that we were working with, that there was, number one, going to be a meaningful commitment that was going to be meaningful for the company and the size of the company that they're at. Then number two, there's going to be clear metrics on what the company was going to do and what we were expecting, and we all agreed on that. There's going to be a contract that was going to be signed by me and by the company, and that lastly, the company agreed that we could report on an annual basis exactly how much progress has been made. So if you go to our website, healthieramerica.org, you can look and see, out of all of our agreements, sort of how far everyone's come and where they're at. And so that has resulted in, I think, the development of an elite group of companies, which has been great, but it's also put a lot of skin in the game that we're all kind of constantly working together to sort of make this thing work and sort of build that momentum. So at first it was kind of tough, so it was hard to get people involved, but now more and more people understand our process. We're not trying to play gotcha with anyone. We're just trying to sort of be transparent, and we're trying to ultimately, our success is if these changes are profitable and successful. So I really think that the future is really bright in this space, and families are now really with us.
Yeah. Just to build on your question, I mean, I think this is really hard for companies. Food is, people are fickle, and we like what we like, and we know what we like, and we've been eating the same products since we were little kids, and that shapes our preferences. So perceptions of change in products, or really a shift in that kind of choice, is incredibly difficult and carries a lot of risk for a company to say, okay, we know we've been profitable in this, selling these products for a long time. We're going to shift and make this move, particularly with big companies. Any little thing is, we're talking about billions of dollars here, right? So that is helping to mitigate that risk is one major challenge, and something that we all have to help and support companies. I think the financial industry has been a real challenge as well. The focus on short-term, on quarterly returns has been a huge barrier to companies being able to take a long-term view on this and invest in and take risk on long-term solutions to where the market heads. Food moves slowly. This is generational shifts we're talking about. This is not every 3 months. Yeah. And part of what we're going to need, I think really where the next major breakthrough is when our friends in the financial sector start asking and expecting for what's the business plan, what's the strategy on these set of issues, and giving more space for CEOs to take some more risk when it comes to this. And I think as that's already starting to happen, you're starting to see a little more wiggle room from my perspective, and I don't know the world as well as many. Companies are starting to step out more, but I think that support is going to be critical if we're actually going to see the accelerated progress that we just have to have. I mean, it's not just we need to, it'd be a nice thing to do as a nation and for our future. We just have to, we have to solve this problem. And I think one way or the other, be it business and the market solves it, or government start becoming much more tightening their regulations on various sides of this, the stakes are simply just too high. Obesity is the #1 cause of disqualification for military service. 27% of 17 to 24-year-olds cannot serve in our military because of obesity, and they had to create a pre-boot camp, for boot camp for a whole other population that wouldn't have otherwise made it in, and lowered the standards for admittance to the military. It's having a huge toll on our kids' ability to learn, both the nutrition side, the hunger side, and physical activity. Our healthcare system is simply not, now that people cannot be dropped, you have 1/3 of the country on track to have diabetes in their lifetime. 1/3. The current model of our healthcare system simply cannot handle that. It just will not work. And we're already spending $190 billion a year creating obesity-related conditions now. That's not when the younger generation, 1/3 of us, have diabetes. So one way or the other, the stakes are simply too high for us not to solve this. And I think we have an opportunity now to sort of all do this together and to really forge a much healthier place in a way we're working together. I think at a certain point, local, and you already start seeing local communities start getting more and more aggressive in the sort of actions they have to take, because they got to figure this out. This is killing their budgets. So, and it's trickling up to then on the national level. So there's this moment to seize, and I think definitely the financial world is going to have to really help move this a much faster way than we are right now.
Yeah. One thing I neglected to do at the outset of this was to say we could leave some time for questions. I think we only have about 10 minutes left or so. Right. Are there questions out there? If not, I have questions to ask myself. I always have questions, but go right ahead. Please say your name and where you're from and to whom you want to address this.
Natasha Lance-Rogoff from Cambridge, Mass. And I run an organization called KickinNutrition.tv, which is a multimedia platform in New York City and Massachusetts schools teaching nutrition education and wellness.
Okay.
And the question I wanted to ask was about the policies related to nutrition education in the schools, because we just launched recently. We have some USDA funding. Thank you. And one of the biggest challenges we see is that you can use, I formerly executive produced Sesame Street, so you can use multimedia to promote education in the schools, and also this promotes hands-on learning as well through extension. So, but the U.S. government does not require nutrition education in the schools. And so there's a real emphasis on core curriculum, but the performance of the children is obviously impacted by this factor.
So your question, is this going to be addressed to Sam, kind of? It sounds like I think it's a Sam
question.
Yeah, so the question being?
In terms of how everybody's working on trying to move the needle for children, but how can this happen? The largest number of children, you reach them in the schools.
Yeah.
How can this community work together to change that so that you can reach the children in the schools where they're eating, change the school cafeteria lunches?
Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective on this, I guess, the federal government can't set standards and require schools to teach nutrition education, right? These are local decisions. These are state or local decisions. Some often, depending on your state, is like district by district deciding these kind of things. And there's like a complete hands-off from the federal government's perspective on, we can't mandate any of that. So
a lot of it comes down to money too.
Well, a lot of it comes down to money, and so we encourage it, we support it, we think it's a good thing. USDA puts out a lot of resources and materials. We talk about it all the time. we're working on, one of the things we're working on is cooking, because cooking is one of our most effective, if not our most effective tool for providing healthy but affordable food for families. Kids aren't getting any kind of basic skills. So as a chef, Michelle and I know that like we cook, we basically know how to do like 10 things. And he's one of the greatest chefs in America. I cook for the president, but we basically like saute. We can make some pasta sauce. We can roast. You know, but we just put it together
Great
differently.
stuff,
But we
yeah.
don't really know that much. Let's be honest.
Right.
The question
We
is,
all
I mean,
believe
it's
you.
not as complicated as it seems. The question is, how can we give kids basic skills?
Yeah, and-
But the point is, we can't so we're going to do everything we can to support it. It's community by community's got to own this, and that's what the actual real change looks like. There's not a magic bullet from above that's going to solve this kind of problem. Unfortunately, if we could, I mean, I would love to.
Which means, does the private sector have to get involved to help?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, importantly, to Sam's point, kind of be careful what you wish for, because I've seen many attempts at nutrition education with kids fall short. But if you make it fun, like with cooking, is it more important that they're eating the broccoli or they know what the broccoli is comprised of, right? So, you know, that when a school board sees or knows, or they're presented with something that they know is going to engage the children, children are going to find fun and they're going to pursue it with some enthusiasm, it's a lot easier to get support from the school board for that, because otherwise they have to replace that piece of the curriculum. They have to take something out somewhere to make room for something. If it's going to be engaging, you're going to find easier allies in that process.
I would just add one thing really quick is all respect for the emphasis on children. Kids don't vote, seniors vote. This is one of the reasons I'm doing Aging in America. You've got 70 million baby boomers coming. A significant portion will need some kind of nutritional support. To say to a generation of older people, here's what you could eat, here's what you're gonna eat, unless we change policy. I think if we could finally find common purpose between schools, food advocates, and senior nutrition, that's when you'll see a real tremendous voting opportunity.
Yep.
You heard it here first.
Do you want to pass your microphone, Natasha, back right there? And then I'll jump on this side of the room if there's someone.
My name is Harlan Weissman. I have an independent consulting business, and I'm a governor on the Board of Governors of the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. I wanted to pick up on some of this, the programs. Some of it is education, but there are a lot of people who know what's good and still do something bad. It's a struggle that all human beings have. For me, it's from the moment the alarm clock goes off in the morning, do I get out of bed or do I push snooze? And you know,
I hit snooze.
we all
It's
have
just- it's given.
right. It's the same struggle. We all have it, and one part of it is the immediate gratification battle over long-term well-being. So we all go through that. And you said something, Sam, earlier about, and I'm going to use my terms, creating the pull for this, because the well-intended paternalistic push often fails.
Right.
If people don't want, and with children, you have almost a captive audience, and I think it's wonderful what's being done with children, but there are a lot of healthcare costs are driven by the obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and all the other things that are related to good nutrition.
Right.
How do we create that pull so that people are asking for this?
Yeah. I think we might say something similar, so jump in, Michelle. I mean, a couple of things. First of all, it has to taste delicious, and I mean that in all senses of the word, right? If this is going to be like, with all due, I mean, I'm going to offend somebody by saying this, and I shouldn't. I'm from DC, I should know better. But if this is just like fish oil and flax seeds, like, we're not going to get anybody to want to shift, right? Sorry to all my fish oil and flaxseed people. So the point is, like, this has to be fun. It has to be and tasty. So I think one of the ways you've seen that strategy play out for us is, like, that's why the First Lady is on, like, Jimmy Fallon and doing crazy things on the South Lawn and also planting the garden and doing these things where we're taking these issues to where people are in fun and relatable ways, and being like, look, this is great. Come with us, as opposed to saying you got to da-da-da-da-da. And I think there's lots of ways that we should think about, that we can think about doing it. And I think that's where the marketing is as well. I mean, that's what the marketing is. It's sort of taking these issues and translating them in emotional ways. So normally, like, we always think cognitively, but you market emotionally. People do respond to their emotions and to their memory. And that's what we have to do for this world, which just simply hasn't been done. And I think that's the pull. When it reminds us of love and our family, when it looks fun and it tastes good, that's where we gotta go. And I think, and that's also when it makes sense for companies, because that's their language. They're not like yelling. You never see people market, don't do this, do our product. It's always like, do our product and be great. And I think if we can do that, we start speaking a language that the business community also understands and can relate to,
Well,
and
they'll
they can
follow
help.
the money.
Yeah.
And they're going to follow the money, but that's
But
right.
that pull has to
So
be
one
there.
thing the First Lady always says is when we do a big thing, she says directly to parents that you have to support the companies that are taking leadership on this. You should be buying their products over companies that are not taking this leadership and not making better products, because that's how then we're going to incentivize the rest of the shift. And that's just true. We have the power to lead the nation as consumers. It's a give and take. It's a relationship.
Yeah. And I think another really important pull, again, and I can't emphasize it enough, where we incentivize, where we just basically say, buy whatever you want with your SNAP benefits, but if you come over here and you buy fresh fruits and vegetables, we'll double your money. It wins without educational outreach, without these other things. We have a fruit and vegetable prescription program where we have seen 41% of our index patients drop BMI in a 14-week intervention because the doctor isn't just giving advice to eat better, and then the family goes home and does the food budget and says, forget about that, we can't afford it. But they say eat better instead of waiting for them to become diabetic and getting the free drugs in the back end for the uninsured family. They're investing in the food on the front end, which is much less expensive. And when that family actually gets that stipend so they can take the doctor's advice, they do it with tremendous vigor. So incentivizing, nobody likes to be told what to do. Advice that comes along with a resource so that you can take the risk to follow it and pursue it. And then I think also that affordability, because everybody talks about access, affordability is huge. Yeah. If you have schools teaching Title I children how to fall in love with kale, and the kids go home and start pestering their parents for kale
chips.
And they take the 3 bus transfers to get to the grocery store and find out that they can't afford the kale, or they don't know how to deal with the kale, and they don't want to take the risk with the money. Now you're making the parent angry. They're no longer an ally. So you know, the roles that the 50-year-olds play as mentors in this system, because they're aunts, they're uncles. Often you'll see a 50-year-old in one of the communities that Robert is serving that's taking care of the 3 children of his deceased niece, because she passed away from, you know, a heart attack or, you know, something like that. They're caregivers, and often we think of the children. We're not talking to the parents, but incentivizing levels the playing field, allows everybody to participate in that type of activity.
Can I just give a real life example to what Michelle was talking about, which is one of the early deals that we did was with Walmart, and it's all about making the healthy choice the easiest choice for people. And so a couple things that Walmart did, one of them was to reformulate the packaged and processed food that they sell to reduce sugar and sodium. And so the same customers buying the same products are just having less sugar, less sodium. So that's almost automatic. So that really is that's as easy as hitting the snooze button. It's easier than.
How much did they publicize that they reformulated?
They publicized it a lot. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot.
But I mean, on the
So-
packaging, I know the public, but
No.
on the packaging, is that something that, no?
No,
Because they
actually-
don't want to know they're making the healthy
That's part
choice.
of. That's an interesting. It's actually a really interesting point, because right now, so Walmart did 25% sodium reduction across the store. So not just their products, for all products in key sodium categories. Period. For any company who's selling there, which is a huge deal, because now what
If you're
happens?
Kraft, that's a big
If you're
deal.
Kraft, because now you're going to also sell that same sodium reduced product in every other grocery store you're selling products. So massive shift underway. But if you see, Campbell's is a great example. Campbell's has been a great leader in this, trying to really figure out, particularly sodium in soups. They went too far in terms of their sodium reduction. People see low sodium, they're like, oh, that doesn't taste good. And they had to come back because there was sort of consumer backlash. And so how we communicate that, these changes, is a question that I think the community is still really grappling with and trying to figure out. My advice is just do it, because it's going to taste great. There's no reason to wave the flag.
Yeah.
But yes, I think you know, there's been some huge. That Walmart community has had a huge impact.
I know that we got like a 5-minute warning to wrap this up about 7 minutes ago, I think. So, and I know we've been talking about food and lunch is next, so everyone's probably a little bit hungry. Last word to Robert, very quickly.
Yeah, man, 40 years ago, for the first time in the history of the world, an army came home and didn't go back to the farm. That had never ever happened
Amen.
after World War II, history of the world. And what you're seeing, we left the agriculture. We've been talking about agriculture. I'm fascinated by the agriculture. What you're seeing is an army of people trying to go back and re-explore what does it mean to be connected
yeah.
again. It's a generational opportunity that I think is coming, and it's what we're talking about, and it is the future.
Indeed.
Well, Robert, Sam, Michelle, you guys have been just absolute rock stars so much. Thank you so much, Raquel and Larry, and thank you all for coming.